We got a lot going on in today's video, so let's get through this. We have 2 pens for review. Why is there 2? Well, it's one for me and one for you, because on top of that, we have a giveaway. On top of that, we'll be doing calligraphy. Why is that? These are fitted with flex nibs, titanium ones on top. And also, this special nib right here, this is his new Alchemy nib from the Good Blue. It's a super duper flexor, very soft, tons of flex, supposed to be vintage flex feel in modern steel. And occasionally, I will speak and rhyme just in time to test these inks. Let me know what you think. We're going to test some surface tension as well, because what's a good ink for flexing? I'm thinking my little surface tension test might tell us more information as well. So strap in, listen for the details on how to win. Let's get going. The pens come in boxes that look like this. The box is open and they house the pen. That's quite convenient. My box that for me came with a special nib. You will be getting a Good Blue lapel pin on top of it. And you know what? I'll throw in a Doodlebud sticker as well. The pens are called the R615. Why? R615. What does that mean? Well, you see this curve that's on this pen here. It's a big long arc. Well, that arc belongs to a circle with a radius of 615 millimeters. That's right, 1,230 millimeter diameter, 1.2 meter diameter circle. So that's where that comes from on the drawing. So he likes to name his pens with dimensions. The L130, the length was 130. So the R615, now you know. Now, many moons ago, Sunil reached out to me. I believe he was one of the first places to send me a pen for review, and sent me the R615. So this one I received, this is an early model, just like when he was kind of just coming on the scene here. So it was a full unfinished raw aluminum body, same design, brass section, and this currently has the untipped flex nib in there, and the camera will not focus. There we go. So let's compare just really quick the updated version, because you make some little improvements over time. It has the triple flat. Okay, so that's still there. You can see the body design, all that stuff is still pretty much the same. One thing I did notice, so these all line up there, right? And with my first one, let's pop that off. You can see the flat spot was sort of like this, and the nib was not in alignment. So you can see here, okay, off kilter. Now when I held it, the flat spot would be in the thumb, and that was quite comfortable for me. But I guess on some of the previous models, the flat spot could be a little bit different, so everything wasn't being aligned with the nib. That is now taken care of. Everything's in alignment. So I like how that's done, because you just set the pen down like that. And for people who didn't like the flat spot there, it's just at the bottom, which kind of makes the most sense. So that's pretty much the only real, I'm sure there's other little finer details that you do just as you make something over time. You might change a tolerance on something, or a little dimension, just a touch, or whatever it is. But all in all, the pen's fairly similar. Mine is the raw aluminum that goes into the brass, and then over time, these will just get out just a hair after heavy kind of usage. So what he's got going on now is stuff like anodizing. That'll really help preserve, because it's a really hard coating, anodize. So the metal won't dig into it to get it out of alignment. But yeah, other than that, it's fairly similar. This other one is acetal. Now these ones, what's different, so this is brass. These ones are stainless steel sections. This is raw stainless steel. I think it's 304, something like that. This has a black PVD coating on there. And of course, the titanium flex nibs. It's got the super flexy feed on there. There's a special polymer feed that they do. We're going to go through that. These have been working quite well. They just write absolutely lovely. You get some pretty serious flex going. So for all the folks that just want to get into the video to get the giveaway, no problem. Let's just cut to the chase. The comment that Sunil was asking is, this is a unreleased color combo. This was shown at the London pen show. It's quite well received. I don't know if the camera is going to pick this up, but it's a very, very nice, appealing blue. I think it looks fantastic with the stainless. He wants help in naming this. So that's the comment you got to leave to be entered in the giveaway. So you got to, 1, be a subscriber of the channel. 2, leave a comment with your recommendation for this color combo. My suggestion to him was maybe just call it the Good Blue. Make this your signature kind of color combo from the good blue, because it is blue. Well, that's my thought. Anyways, love to hear from you. I'm going to look at the calendar here. I'm filming this right now, and it's May the 4th. May it be with you. Let's do it. It's going to release probably on the weekend here, so let's do May 12th, Friday, May 12th. I'll make the draw then, so you have then to enter. I will make an announcement on the channel community page if someone is in the comments pretending to be me and want you to WhatsApp them and send them money. It's a scam, okay? I will make a community post, and then you got to email me. The details will be there. Let's get to reviewing these pens. The original Good Blue with brass and aluminum converter, 45.5. The new Good Blue with stainless steel and aluminum, 45. Now we got the stainless steel with acetal, 35. So let's go through some of these details quick. If you want full dimensions and everything like that, just go to the Good Blue website. I'll flash it on the screen. It'll be in the description. But here we go. You have cap, middle section here, body. Initially, you might go, well, what side is which? You can see the body's a little bit longer than the cap. When you go to undo it, depending which one is tighter, right? So if this is nice and snug, you can unscrew the cap and it comes off like that. However, if the cap is nice and snug and maybe this isn't as snug, you undo it and then the body will come undone. So a way to avoid that, you know, you get it a little more snug there, but you just grip it here and undo it. It comes undone. Less than a turn. It's about 3/4 of a turn. Cartridge converter. Standard stuff. Don't eyedropper it. It will not seal. Okay, there you go. The section here is stainless steel, and we got some knurling. This knurling is done very nice, not sharp. It comes in handy because there is a fairly significant step down. If you do the math, you measure this diameter, that diameter, subtract them, divide by 2, you got 2.35 millimeters. You can also measure it. I'll show you how you do that. For those folks that don't use these a bunch and you have them, there's this thing that sticks out when you do your measurements. This is a depth gauge. So you put it there, doink, touch off, we're getting 2.24. So reasonably close. Another depth gauge is here. See how these slide? Oh, focus, just forget it. There we go, they slide up. They're flush here, so what you do, you put this on this surface, you touch down, hit that, you're getting 2.4. So there you go, another way to do a measurement with your calipers. So the step down, like I said, it's a fairly large one. It's not sharp. It doesn't bother me, but I can understand some folks it would bother you. But the way I grip and where I position, I'm having knurling touching each of my fingers, and it's quite comfortable. I have a nice grip on it. I don't have any issues with it sliding off. And here's a quick close-up of the acetal one. Much quieter, because we don't have aluminum on steel there, so a lot more quiet. It's not going to blow these out because we have a thread stop. So that big collar there, right? This is going to stop you from over tightening. There would be some give. If you really wrench on it, it will, you know, you could blow it out. But it's going to be pretty good. That depth stop is there. So I like the black PVD too. I find it gives a little bit more texture than the raw stainless. This has a little bit more grip. But again, the knurling on here helps you with that as well. And you can see, looks like that was like lasered in there. We got the Good Blue on the section and some of the info on the nib for the love of flex. Sunil at the Good Blue loves to do flex writing. If you want to get deeper into the pens from like a review perspective, just watch my video I did on the first one I was sent. It can be used for these ones as well. I don't have a ton of overlap. Let's get to writing. I'm going to write this out with these pens and also with this new prototype Alchemy Flex nib, and on top of that, we're going to compare it to writing samples from a bunch of other pens. I was flipping through this book here. This was sent to me by Gemma Miley from Tom's studio. Her and her husband do calligraphy sets and pens and other, they do fountain pens as well, all sorts of stuff. So she sent me this. I did a review. We did a calligraphy lesson even. And look at this smart guy here named Doodlebud. I did a flex off video and I wrote this down with all these different pens here. My FA, nib, the original Good Blue, some Osprey, other ones, Fountain Pen Revolution Ultra Flex. So I'll write this same thing on the same, I have the same paper as well. I'll try to do my best rendition to make it the same, and we'll compare it with these. So that's a bonus. Now what we're gonna do, I already have these pens inked up, is we're gonna do a quick little check with these tubes here, these capillary tubes. I did a video on this as well. And I found these inks are working well for flex. There's also, I have this one too, this Infinity ink. I think this might be really good. So I have a test tube for each. We're going to dip them really quick and just sort of compare to see how well these inks flow in here. If there's any hints on, if you're playing at home, you can get these. And if you don't want to know if this is a good ink for flex or not, here's how you can sort of get some insight and check it. So I'm playing with these inks here real quick. I have them in same order. So bottom to top, Neon Blue, Sargasso Sea in the middle, and Infinity Turquoise on the top. And just going along, I'm trying to see what angle I need for them to start moving. But one thing I've noticed, if you watch the one here in the middle, Sargasso Sea, you barely move it. Let me get you a white background. Okay, that's better. So you can see now that Sargasso Sea, like it really coats the tube and wets it. And once it wets, that's what you want ink to do. When you got to have low surface tension, high surface energy. And so this is interacting really well with that, and that just promotes flow. Now, like if you hold it level, a slight change, and it's just flowing like crazy. So that's, I find Sargasso Sea is really good for flex. You can see these ones are leaving a bit of a coating as well. I have some that don't leave much of a coat that do quite well. They're fairly wet. You can see once they wet, they flow really quick too. So I think that's the most common thing you want to find in a ink that's really going to work on, if you want to make a pen more wet, really make it flex, is how well does it coat one of these tubes. And there probably is something to do with the angle, but that will be for another time. But if you got some inks, you want to know which ones are good for flex, that would be something. If it does what it's doing here with Sargasso Sea in the middle, coating that tube, it's probably going to work well with flex. The pens are inked up. I have Rhodia paper. I'm going to try to write this with these pens, beginner's modern calligraphy, and I'll do a separate sample. For me to do a good job of this, I can't talk at the same time, so I'm just going to shut up here and just focus on it, do my best to record it. I might narrate over top, voiceover, or just play music. We'll see what I'm feeling, but let me start writing. So writing with these titanium flex nibs that Sunil provided for me, I really actually enjoy these more than the flex nibs I have on the previous model. They feel more natural. They have a nice bounce to them. They're not as hard. They are a little bit softer as well. We're not talking a vintage Gold Flex wet noodle pen, but they work quite well. It's a nice flex, especially for someone like myself who has a bit of a heavier hand. The super soft touch ones, when I do calligraphy with those nibs, it is much more difficult for me to control, but this is good. So I'm quite enjoying these. The feed, they do a marvelous job of keeping up. That is one thing that's kind of annoying when you're trying to do your flex, especially when you are doing a calligraphy set, is when you run out of ink. So it's the same frustration exists if you're doing it with a fountain pen as well. But in general, as long as you have a good wet ink in there and using those capillary tubes to help identify some candidates, that takes away most of the pain points right there, and this nib will keep up. So that's the part that's quite enjoyable, because there's nothing worse than you're doing this, trying to do a nice writing, and the sucker runs dry. And same thing with the one here that you'll be a lucky viewer will win in the draw. I almost find this one is actually writes just a touch better than the other titanium one. It's more the hairline. It's just a hair thinner. And so it gives a nice effect as well. For me, with flex, it's more about the ratio instead of just the maximum flex you can get with a nib, but more the visual appeal, the way it looks and sets with the hairline strokes. I find that's really the distinguishing factor. I would sacrifice maximum line width, but in return gain a thinner hairline when I do my writing. At least that's my personal opinion and experience. But yeah, this is great. These feeds just keep up. You're seeing here, like I'm not having to, I'll miss the odd time or something like that, but I'm not having to restart. It's so nice when you're doing writing samples just to get it in one go instead of everything's going great and then you railroad right at the end. And out of frustration, you just scrap everything. For these ones here, I didn't speed up. I'll speed up some stuff later on the end, but you can just get an idea as well, the proper speed. You can push these hard and pretty quick, but if you just take your hand, your writing is going to look better anyways, and the feeds really will keep up as well. And so I'm just doing the sample now so I can compare to the other ones I've done with some of the previous pens as well. One question people had for these pens was where are they made? They're made in the UK. So Sunil is based in the UK. Machining is done in the UK as well. Of course, there's some other parts from around the world. He's not making his own converter. But in general, the majority of the pen, the machining, assembly, design, all that stuff, it's done right there in the UK as well. Yeah, it's really cool. Like Sunil, who runs the Good Blue, he loves calligraphy and flex writing. So this is one thing we're really discovering here in the fountain pen world when you first get into it. So it's cool. And this is one of the nibs he sent me. So this is a prototype. Now there's a little spot. There's a bit of a gap with the feed and the nib. So I was inspecting it and I found a little ramp there on that feed. And you see that how it goes up. So it's pushing the nib up. So I'm just going to touch that up a little bit. But this is not a finished product. This is his prototype. He did a round one of these Alchemy nibs. And so this is round two. He sent it on to me. I'll show you the letter he wrote. He's put a lot of time on it. But I'm just going to toy with it a little bit. And I'm using my OMAS here as a bit of a reference so you can see it. It's nice and tight. There's really no gap. So that's one little thing. We're getting a little closer. I fired it up the other day and it did miss a few times. Just want to give you an idea of the feed there. So that's why I took that top off, because I discovered it once I looked a little bit closer. Now that little smudge you saw there, I'll talk about that here when I wrap up the video. But the sensation with this is it's absolutely effortless. Like this is by far the softest nib I've ever written with. I have not written with a vintage Noodler's Waterman wet noodle pen, wet noodle nib. I haven't had the pleasure of trying one of those out yet. But of all the pens I've ever written with that are flex nibs, other than say like a Zebra G nib, which are specifically calligraphy nibs, I have not written one which is just so soft and springy. So he's getting close, but I'll show you there's a few little things that happen with this nib. That's why it's still in the prototype phase. But it's cool that, someone's putting effort into this and trying to do the best job possible when it comes to flex and giving a balance between vintage feel and modern materials and fitting into modern pens. So it's not an easy task. So this is, a step in the right direction. But here you go. So this is some of the issue. I think with the cutouts a little bit, you saw it lifted off there. So if you press too hard, it's going to lift off. So there's some training that has to go on. It's no different than an instrument. You need to get accustomed to it. Or even if you're into golf and a new set of golf clubs, right? They're not just perfect as soon as you get them, even if they're fitted. You got to play with it a little bit. So same thing with this nib. It's very touchy. So I'm pretty sure I'm pushing way too hard with it and it's lifting off like that because the letter he wrote me was fantastic. But I thought I'd just do a little bit of a larger format, and I'm slowly getting the feel of it, and it does feel quite nice. The railroading isn't really happening from a feed issue, an ink supply issue. It is a lift-off issue. So it's just the nib coming up off the feed, and that's going to interrupt the flow. But this is something I always like to write when I do a flex nib, is Lovely Sunset. Yeah, it just kind of flows off. Mango Chutney, that's my go-to when I'm testing how well a nib is performing, a regular fountain pen nib, or if I did a grind. But Lovely Sunset, I really enjoy writing that when it comes to flex nibs. And here, just going to speed it up a little bit just to play around. But overall, yeah, the experience with it's quite nice, but it is, has some pain points. So he's got some ironing out to do. Again, that lifted off, so I just bent it down a little bit just to get it back, and fires up right away again. So it's not an ink supply issue. It's just a little bit of a design on how the nib is sitting. Maybe the nib has to be a little bit thicker, and depending on the position of those little slits that are in there too, there's a little bit of work to do and tiny little experiments, and it's a slow process. And but I hope he's going to get there. So I'm just going to do a few more writing samples, wrap things up, and then we'll do a final review on everything. The good news, they didn't railroad during the writing samples. The bad news is my typo. So I did it twice as well. Let's talk about these. I gave you lots of comments on there. Love the titanium ones. They perform extremely well. I haven't had any issues. Just put a good wet ink in there and you're not going to have any problems. One big thing, hey, that's kind of cool. Sends me a prototype nib, an unfinished product that's not quite there yet. So that's really super cool. We're getting there, is all I can say. The feel is right. There's just a few things, as I sort of showed. If you go too heavy, it's going to lift off. And so look, he's going to see this and be like, what did you do to my nib? It's it's all bent up and mangled. So I'm obviously going too heavy on that as far as pressure goes. Let me show you. This is page 2 of the letter Sunil sent me. He's has tons of hours on these, so his hand is better tuned to how that nib is performing. So you can see he's not having those issues at all. He's kind of has it dialed right in. But you know, so there's a bit of a learning curve with something like this, but also you know, he mentioned it too, he's not quite there yet. That, yeah, if you do push too hard, you're getting some lift off. So there's a lot of geometry to play with. It's the location of that slit, how far you go. Should it maybe be further up? I asked him, I said, hey, can I give you a few thoughts? And he said, sure, I'd love to hear them. So here are my thoughts. If this was a project I was working on, here's some things I would look at. So one, just looking at the profile, you can sort of see it is bending up where that slit is, and it's sort of staying there. And this is kind of at the narrowest, so it is the weakest point. So we want to have soft flex, but we want it to have enough strength and rigidity to snap back down without permanently deforming, right? So I would play with actually moving the slit further up, and you could play with angles. You angle it maybe this way or that way, play around a little bit. If I was playing, you know, I'd be thinking about it. I put a little thought into that pattern, but yeah, maybe even it's a curved one to change the snap profile, so the springiness profile of it. That's something I would play with a little bit there too. And I would look at other places where there's little bits of spring steel that are changing, coming back to position, and maybe it's on some type of machinery, stuff like that, and just studying that type of thing to see how that's done, where that optimum spot is. I would play around a little bit again with the feed and the nib, getting that fitment just right. I'm very confident Sunil has done this as well, but you know, I'd be looking at vintage pens and just comparing to see, you know, just the size of the nibs, the profile of the nibs, the shoulders. Or is this a wider kind of profile versus this? Or are these, you know, a little bit more snug, a little more rounder? The fitment to the feed, all those types of things is what I'd be looking for. Like one thing, for example, I did it down here to show when you do some of your strokes. Well, yeah, I won't right now. I've had it open, but we'll see. If you press really too hard, what happens, and you can see it on these strokes here, is the feed will actually run into the page. So this will come off, lift, and then you're writing and you got some flow going, but this is going to bump and hit the page. So, you know, we look at how OMAS does that, because this will come off as well. Okay, it's flexing. I'm not going hard. Don't worry, everybody. I'm going gentle, but it lifts off. But the shape of the profile there is a lot more slight than it is there. So you can see the difference there. But we can look at, say, Pelican. It sort of does it a different way. It goes out further, but it has like a sort of the front of a boat, the bow of a boat there right on the front. So there's all sorts of different design ideas and features from all these vintage pens, and you can just put yours beside and just sort of see and go, okay, I could change this, I could change that, and make some adjustments that way, which again, that's what he's doing. But I think it's great. He sent me an unfinished product to play around with, so that was really neat, but also wants me to share that with everybody too, to show sort of his work in progress and what he's working on. So thanks for doing that. Thanks for sharing, Sunil, and sending this off for me to review, and also sending this one to give away. Thanks for watching, and thanks to Sunil, the Good Blue, for providing me these pens to review, and also this shiny blue one for giveaway. So don't forget, leave your comment for color suggestion, hit subscribe or you can't win. May 12th is the place to be, and hitting subscribe will let you know my next video comes out, which will be soon. It'll be an interview with a Nibmeister. Catch you next time.